Hello, my name's Emma Levy, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about one of the things that we need to understand if we're going to be able to make sense of the progress that you're making and how effectively the changes that we're working on together are helping you to achieve your goals. Every client who comes to me is looking at making some kind of change, at improving something in their lives. And it's really important that we can understand whether the different things that we work on together are actually helping you to make those positive changes. Now, a lot of the time, this is something that I'll be considering all the time in the background as we work together, but some of the time it's something that we'll discuss explicitly, and I always want to be sure that you have the tools to be able to analyse what's going on for yourself between our clinic sessions, so that you can make sense of your progress. And understanding variation, two different types of variation, is one of the things that's essential to be able to do this. And the reason it's essential is because there are always decisions to make about next steps. Let's say there's a new movement pattern that you're working on to help with movement at a particular joint where you've been having some discomfort, for example, and we want to know whether a particular exercise is useful and decide whether to continue doing that exercise, whether to stop doing it because actually it's not helpful, or maybe it's it's contributed to improvement as much as it can, or whether it would be better to do it a little bit differently. And so everything that we're working on together, these are the kind of decisions that we need to be making, and either I'll be making them or we'll be making them together, discussing them and so on. And if we don't understand the difference between the two types of variation, we may end up making the wrong decision. So let's have a look at the two types of variation. Well, first of all, the concept of variation using dice. Some people I know call it a die. I call it a dice. So when we're looking at variation, we're looking at whether or not the outcomes that we get are due to chance. So imagine you have a dice and you throw it once. The dice has 6 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side. You throw that dice once. How likely is it that you will get a 6? It's a 6th, isn't it? Because you've got 6 options. So if you threw that same dice 6 times, you would expect roughly to get a 6 once. It might be 0, not at all. It might be twice, but you'd be pretty surprised if it was much more than that. And if we had a second dice, if we get a 6 with the first dice, how likely is it that we'll get a 6 with the second dice as well? It's less, isn't it? Now, what about if we throw 5 dice? Imagine getting this result. All 5 dice, you get a 6. Now, is that likely? Would you be surprised? You probably would, unless you had fixed the dice. If you had somehow loaded them to make sure that they fell in a way that would result in a 6 every time, yeah, that's going to happen. That's what we would call non-random variation. It's not due to chance. Whereas the example of throwing one dice and having a 1 in 6 chance that you will get a 6, then we're looking at something happening due to chance. You would not expect to get a 6 5 times on 5 different dice. It couldn't be due to chance. The likelihood of it is very, very slim. Let's think about how this might relate to things that you're working on improving. So, for example, imagine that you want to improve your sleep. Now, there are many different things that you might do. You might change some of the structural things around you. For example, you might put up some blackout blinds where you hadn't previously. You'd only had nets, for example. Or you might change your breathing patterns when you are going to bed so that you're breathing differently. Or you might start doing some particular exercises gently just before bed that are designed to help with sleep. Whatever kind of thing it is you're doing, one of the things you might measure could be how much time you spend asleep, how many hours, how many minutes. Now, if that's something you decide to measure, you might start out thinking, well, how are you going to get from the amount you started with to the amount that you want? And what does it mean if every night you get the same amount of sleep? Well, first of all, is that likely? Would it surprise you if you got exactly the same number of hours and minutes of sleep every night? It would surprise me, because there is an element of randomness, of chance in everything. And we really wouldn't expect, even if you say, I'm aiming for 8 hours sleep, I would be incredibly surprised if you had exactly 8 hours sleep. I would expect it to be plus or minus 5, 10, 15 minutes, for example. And for you, it's important to understand whether that variation, plus or minus 5, 10, 15 minutes, for example, whether that is just due to chance or whether it's because something special is going on. And our understanding of that will influence the decision about whether to continue with that new part of your nighttime ritual. Similarly, imagine that your child is having difficulty self-regulating their emotions, and you would like to reduce either the number of times per day or per week that they are dysregulated, or the duration of those episodes of emotional dysregulation, for example. Now, so we can measure the time, we can measure the frequency, and again, there is going to be an element of randomness in all of that, from one day to another, from one week to another. What we need to know is whether the change in frequency or duration is purely random, or if there's something special going on that we hope would be because of something different that you and I and your child are working on, that is going to lead to the outcome, the improvement that you're aiming for. And looking at another example, let's say you've come back to running after having an injury, having some pain, and one of the things that you might be looking for as you return to running is, first of all, how much of it can you do with an amount of discomfort that is acceptable to you. And so we might be looking at measuring the degree of discomfort that you feel while you're running, or we might be looking at the duration of each running episode, or how far you run, for example. And again, from one run to another, there's going to be some variation. We wouldn't expect to get exactly the same thing happening every time. And it's really important that we can understand whether the differences between any discomfort that you may be experiencing, how long it takes to run your 5K, for example, whether those differences are just due to chance, or whether it's because, let's say, a reduction in discomfort is actually because of a new way that you've been learning to reflect on or to think about little niggles that might crop up from time to time. So, thinking again about what this is all about, it's about making sure we can make the best decisions together about next steps. So it's really important that we don't assume that we have only variation that's due to chance, when actually, if we collect the right data for long enough and analyse it correctly, we might find that actually there is variation that is not due to chance, that may be telling us that yes, this thing that you have changed is helping you to work towards the improvement that you're looking at. Equally, it's important to make sure that we don't make a decision based on the error of thinking that there is a positive change, that there is variation that's due to something special going on, when actually, if we analyse the data correctly, we would discover it's only due to chance, and so perhaps we need to look at trying something different. So, returning to DICE, we've got these two different types of variation: random variation due to chance, which is in everything, and non-random variation when something special is going on and we want to work out what we need to look at the data to work out if there is something non-random, something special going on. And there are particular ways that in another video I will later on discuss how we do that, and one-to-one in clinic, or if you chose to study this with me, we would look at the very specific ways that we analyse the data to know if there is something non-random going on, so that we can make the best decisions about what to do next. And that's one of the things, one of the ways that I will be helping you, whatever your goals are, whatever it is that we're working on together in clinic.